Well, it's great that you got... Now, going kind of from right to left, who was next? I think the lady at the back may have been next, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm one of the youth representatives here, and I was also participating in the UN Forum on Disaster Risk Reduction last week, which was also held here in Geneva, where two young people from the Philippines and Bolivia both came, a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, who had saved their communities from climate change-related disasters. A massive flood in the Philippines which killed 300 students in a neighboring community. This young person at 13 raised a program in his school, a campaign to actually rebuild the school, and he as his family started building the first bricks when the community refused to move it out of a disaster-prone area. I just wanted to add, in terms of a way to successfully invest a small amount of funds in a large amount of impact, is the education of both women and children. Educating children can actually bring much of this information into homes much more quickly than governments can do educating adults alone. And young people, well, there are very few of us here, actually have played a critical role in disaster risk reduction in communities. And pulling on some of the information from the panel earlier in here about involving women in these processes, in terms of effectively using funds, often educating women or empowering women to make decisions about disaster risk reduction can be one of the most powerful things we can do for immediate adaptation.
Thank you. Very good point, and that was definitely the conclusion of the preceding session in this room. Could I have I think you were next, and then the gentleman behind you.
Thank you very much. And picking up both on that issue and on the issue of national accountability, because I think first of all, thank you very much for a set of very good presentation. And I think we're getting a pretty coherent message here that this needs to be development focused. We need development delivery mechanisms. We need development planning to be central. I think one key challenge we're facing with using ODA mechanisms is that it's not just about the additionality, that people are questioning, first of all, do we reach the 0.7, and secondly, how we're going to measure that the additional resources flowing through ODA mechanisms are indeed additional. I think the second question is the level of ownership. So is this going to be decided by the World Bank Board, or is it going to be decided by developing country national governments or other developing country stakeholders? And I think with the Paris Agenda, we've actually got some tools to get that ownership at that level. And I think it's accountability at that level that we also need. So my question is, would you as a panel have suggestions on how we can use mechanisms like that, possibly also experiences under the PRSP process, for instance, to engage a wide range of stakeholders, indeed also beyond an environment ministry, and get that sort of accountability? And secondly, very specifically, what would that take for a Copenhagen Agreement? For instance, one of the points I'm constantly making in the UNFCCC is that instead of just focusing on a number of vulnerable countries, we need markers that we need to be focusing on vulnerable people. And then it means we can use MDG indicators, we can use poverty reduction indicators, and then we have an accountability mechanism that also allows stakeholders in those countries to have meaningful dialogues with a broad range of government agencies.
Okay, thank you. I might ask Sinian to answer that. Not now, but in a second.
Yeah, good morning.
People are forgetting to introduce themselves. I know who some of you are, but not everyone else does.
So I'm Daniel Vermus from Media 21 Global Journalism Network here in Geneva. And my question is, well, it's about all what we are saying. The issues depend also from public pressure, from public opinion. And there we have a very powerful tool. We could have a very powerful tool, which are the media, precisely. And it's not very much discussed in these debates, unfortunately. And when I speak about the power of media, it's not just having a story on CNN or sometimes an article in New York Times, but it's really how to tell massively to the people all over the world what is happening. And then there should be another strategy, to my view, and I want to ask you here what you think about that, how to involve the media industry and the networks of concerned journalists who exist all over the world to discuss together how to tell the people, how to find the proper wording to explain the situation, how to reach out the right targets, such as decision makers, such as public opinion of the rich countries, of victims of the poor countries, and also how to involve local journalists in those poor countries so that the measures, the necessary changes are understood and implemented by the population. So all these issues, are they
I think it's an excellent point. I have to say there was a session yesterday on new media and climate change, and it was one of the worst attended sessions at the Global Humanitarian Forum. It was an excellent session, and the point was made that actually, I mean, Daniel, you said how to tell people what's happening. It's equally true how people can tell you what's happening to them. And one of the challenges, of course, in least developed countries is access to media, access to the means to get information about what's happening to you as a farmer or you as a, you know, a mother who has to go and collect water, which isn't there anymore. How do you get that information out? It's not just a question of getting it to people. And the point was made that the new media is creating these incredibly powerful platforms for communities of interest to come together, to mobilize action, to get things done, but vast numbers of people in the world are not sharing that platform. You know, I see we've got Christine from the Free Play Foundation. I'm sure she's going to, is she here? Or not? No, maybe she isn't, but she was making this point. But point is extremely well taken. I think the other point you're making is get journalists and communicators more involved in these conversations. Completely agree. So it's great that you're here. I'm going to carry on around the room. There was a hand who's, I can see, I'm going to come back to that side, but you, sir, in the front. Madam, do you want to? Okay, you, sir, and then you behind you, and then yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman. I'm Hans Küng, Global Ethic Foundation. I would like to ask a question to André Schneider. That means the World Economic Forum. I gave a keynote address in Davos in, I think, '79 about do we need ethical standards for financial transactions. And a few years later I wrote a book about global ethics and global politics and economics. And there is a page which was quoted when I was recently in the Earth Institute at Columbia University by Jeffrey Sachs, that there was one of the very few who have foreseen the crisis, because I had written that what happened in 1929 can happen again if already a small observation of Alan Greenspan about the exuberance of markets, you will remember that, had a tremendous impact on all the stock exchanges of the world. So it seems to me, I wrote that probably the chaos theory has to be applied to economics also. The chaos theory means that you can have very limited actions with tremendous effects. Now, I have now the question, if you speak about the forecasting possibilities, one, why did the World Economic Forum not foresee all of that? That was foreseeable. I know the common wisdom is that was not foreseeable. All bankers in Wall Street said it was foreseeable. Why did you not warn? And or you made a confession of sins in the meantime. Well, it's just bankers do not like to make confessions of sins. So, you know, maybe in the World Economic Forum would be a good platform to do that. My second question is, do you still treat ethical issues or the ethical aspects of business and especially of the world economy? I think everybody writes about that this is ultimately a moral crisis. And if you just read today about this, a whole page in the English newspaper we had in the hotel, the financial thing about the man who made the biggest financial Madoff, about Madoff. It was very clear all this is ultimately a moral crisis of people lying and stealing, you know, very elementary things. You do not need a very complicated business ethics for that. It was just elementary ethics of business, of the citizen. All this would have been nice to have it treated somewhere, not just in a small group, but, well, this is a major issue. So I'm sorry I'm a little passionate, but I think it's passionate. Right.